right, new reporting tonight on Donald Trump's state of mind, with aides describing him as lost in self-pity, venting about news coverage, and, quote, confounded by the events that are happening. In interviews with the Washington Post, allies and advisors say that Trump has adopted a, quote, woe is me tone, casting himself in, quote, the starring role of the blameless victim as he confronts a slumping economy, a surging pandemic, growing racial unrest, and a stumbling re-election campaign. Now, at the same time, new polls show Americans are unhappy with Trump's response to many of these events. Two-thirds, as I mentioned earlier, now disapprove of Trump's handling of the pandemic. That is the highest number recorded to date. 67% also disapprove of Trump's handling of racial turmoil in this country. And now, Trump's reacting to those critics with unusual comments on Hannity just last night, defending his own mental fitness. Watch.
I actually took one when I very recently when I was, you know, the radical left was saying, "Is he all there? Is he all there?" And I proved I was all there because I aced it. I aced the test. So I took it at Walter Reed Medical Center in front of doctors, and they were very surprised. They said, "That's an unbelievable thing. Rarely does anybody do what you just did."
All right, joining me now is Mark Thompson, host of the Make It Plain podcast, and back with us, Tim O'Brien from Bloomberg Opinion. He has also written a book about Trump Nation. Tim, what in the world is going on with this cognitive test that the president is talking about, and the way he described it, that the doctors were surprised that he passed it? I'm not sure if that is a compliment or not.
Well, you know, like his financial records, the president also has yet to make his health records public. Whoever these mythical doctors are, if they exist, the president should trot them out in public, and they should sign medical records that define what this test was and what the president actually passed. I think this is Donald Trump lying again publicly or fabricating publicly different things that have occurred, and he's trying to make them, you know, who knows what he did at Walter Reed. They've never come clean about what that visit to the hospital was to begin with. Having said all this, this is yet another indicator the president is under pressure because he has failed to lead competently in one of the biggest crises to ever hit the United States. I think the pandemic and this important Black Lives Matter movement, and he has not risen to the occasion to lead around those things, to show that he is a healthy adult who can learn from his mistakes and regroup and course correct. Instead, he's looking around trying to blame other people, casting himself as the victim, and he's well aware that the public is doubting both his leadership and his competency, his mental acuity. And I think that's why he's pointing to these so-called cognitive tests that he's taken to sort of say, other people have looked at me and I'm fine. And it's because he knows the public right now is worried that he's not fine.
All right, so Mark, you know that the moment that statement came out of the president's mouth, all the journalists in D.C. were thinking, what is going on? Of course, they asked the press secretary in the White House about it. Aides to Mr. Trump, this is according to the New York Times, aides to Mr. Trump did not respond to questions about what test he took, when he took it, and whether they would actually make the results public, to Tim's point earlier. Explain this to us. What is it that we're watching here? A president going on national television saying he's taking cognitive tests, praising himself for the results, and nobody from his aides on down can confirm it or even talk about it to the press?
Well, as always, his insecurity is well known, and it's enormous. It doesn't make sense. He is attacking Joe Biden's cognition, and yet he feels the need to defend his own. Why? And then to say that everyone was surprised that he did so well, that's not a very intelligent thing to say either. We don't even know if he took a test or whether it was a significant, as a physician just said to me over the phone, whether it was even a significant neurological exam. The real question is, and not just cognition, but also literacy. He was told, he read that there was a pandemic looming, and he did nothing. He has been told that Russia is seeking bounties for the heads of U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan, and he has done nothing. If that's neither a question of cognition or literacy, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and Tim, to that point, the president apparently confounded playing the victim card in all of this. We see it in his tweets when he's going after the Supreme Court decisions, calling things presidential harassment, dismissing the court's decisions. What do you make of the president playing the victim card here?
Well, you know, I really would recommend you Mary Trump's new book. She lays out in very telling detail this hothouse emotional and psychological environment that the president grew up in which his father had a very binary view of the world. There were winners and losers. His father was a racist. His father was thuggish in his business practices. Donald Trump adopted all of that and went out into the world with it. And I think Mary Trump has a key observation. This is someone who actually never felt loved, and he sought it in all these public forums. I think one of the reasons he is very needy and wants to be center stage constantly. And she has a very telling sentence in there that Donald Trump feels that the world let him down. And if you are not sympathetic with him about that, he's going to make you feel it. And I think a lot of this lashing out he does, despite the fact that he was born wealthy, despite all the privileges he was born into, he constantly has this feeling of he's oppressed. People are going to take things away from him. Everyone's against him. And he's been doing this, by the way. He's a 74-year-old man. He's been doing this for, you know, at least 60 years publicly. And we're just seeing it play out now on an international stage because he's president.
Mark Thompson, final thought to you about the president's state of mind as he sees what is happening in this country all around him. It has been a tough couple of weeks with some of the Supreme Court decisions that have gone against this administration. The streets are obviously against him. Just yesterday, New York City painted Black Lives Matter outside of Trump Tower. What kind of state of mind do you think this president in as he watches all of this play out?
Well, I think Tim touched on it, and even mentioning Mary Trump's book. We are all victims of a man who's been unloved. And there's no one worse to have in a position like him, because that's why he doesn't care what happens to the rest of us. He feels the world doesn't love him. You know, he's sort of a cross between Rodney Dangerfield for feeling that way, Don Rickles for insulting everyone, and Foster Brooks for his cadence. The three of us are too young to have seen those people, but you all look those characters up on YouTube when he even sounds like Foster Brooks and No One Loves Me. So, you know, his followers are codependent on someone who feels he's never been loved. And he wants to make the rest of us, if not the world, codependent. Who loves him? Vladimir Putin. And that's why he's so loyal. He probably didn't have the love from his parents and his siblings he thought he wanted. And we can't allow ourselves to be victimized by that at all. I think that's his problem. As far as Black Lives Matter is concerned, I'm glad it was painted out there. He's called it something hateful. He has no idea what he's talking about, and it's a direct lineage from his father to him, his father who himself was in the Ku Klux Klan.
All right, Mark Thompson making sure the cultural references stay alive here on The Beat this evening. Thank you so much. Tim O'Brien, thank you as well. I appreciate it.